back to the garage, you guys. We have been working up to this point, tillering our bamboo back and belly bows. At this juncture of the process, we are now on the home stretch of final tillering and last heat treatments and etc. So right now in this current state, this bow has been heat treated one more time. And I am going to kind of take you through the process of the second heat treatment, the value of which I'm not entirely sure. Generally speaking, I only heat treat once or do multiple times to get different tillering effects. But in this instance, my hope is to finish out with this bow and have it not have any string follow on the limbs. So I know that we're going to have some set involved in the original from the original shape, but the idea here is to have our tips line up at least even with the grip as closely as possible. And so that is my goal with this particular bow. And if you follow along, I'm going to take you along with the ride, so stay with me and we'll go through some more heat treating process here. So here's my heat tempering setup, you guys. Just wanted to kind of go through the process, the actual process with you. I think everybody's at least familiar or has been exposed to what heat treating comprises, as far as hitting the belly of your bow, maybe with a heat gun or something, or even putting it over hot coals in a coal, something that's going to keep it bent opposite of the string, and then gives us the opportunity to then heat the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of heat this right quick and talk about how I go about heating my limbs. I put the gun on its high setting, and when I get going here, guys, I'll just start out at the extreme. And as you're doing this, you'll start to notice that your bow starts to follow this clamp that's hanging on the far end. That it begins to, it'll bounce a little bit, but then it just settles down and pulls right toward that weight. You don't want to be too close to the bamboo, obviously that would burn it, bamboo or any other wood for that matter. And I'm just slowly making my way up the limb. Now, as you make your way up, you guys, and this is really more of a tempering exercise than it is a heat treating exercise, but the bamboo will take on some different color. It starts to toast, kind of like I described in the last video, but it'll also kind of start to smell like hay, and that's how you know that you're getting that it's starting to heat up. And really what this should do is heat to where it's hotter than what you can actually handle to the touch. Now, where we don't want to let up, and I know that we feel like we get a lot of bang for our buck by tempering out in this area, we have got to make sure we hit here. The idea being that as we start to stiffen this belly lamb by heating it, that we do not allow ourselves to leave this area up in here in the fade untempered or unheat treated, because when we do, we run the risk of taking a hinge right out of our grip area. So this is a very important place to make sure that you get a thorough heat treatment in addition to the remainder of the limb. Now guys, this will go on for a while. What I do is just make real doggone sure that that entire limb length is heated up evenly and given a really, really deep heat treatment. So this will go on like this, just slowly moving over the limb. I would say for about 7 or 8 minutes. I timed it in a previous attempt to do some heat treating, but we'll let it go for about just under 10 minutes. But you'll know that it's getting really nice and hot when you start smelling it, when you start seeing it. Certainly if you see any smoke, it's time to stop. And just kind of continue with this process. And of course, once we are done, we're going to allow that to then cool completely cool to the touch before we take it out of the coal. I'm doing this pretty early in the day, so I'm going to have the opportunity to let it cool completely to the touch, take it out of the coal, and then cool for the remainder of the meat of today. And then I'm going to go ahead and take it back to the tillering tree this afternoon or this evening to see what kind of benefits we got out of this. And I can see that the bamboo is starting to get pretty toasted here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off right here, and I'm going to finish up with this heat treat, and I will catch up with you guys after it's all cooled down. So we have heat treated both limbs at this point. It's been about, I want to say, 6 hours now that this bow has been allowed to cool from its last heat treatment. You can see we got very similar results as from our initial heat treatment, where we started with a bow that was basically even tips to grip with 0 string follow, and are now sitting somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 inches of setback following the heat treatment. I am going to go ahead and get this thing strung up, kind of measure it out on the tillering tree a little bit, and kind of see where it takes me in terms of weight, and then we'll come back and put it on the tillering stick and really critique the tiller and see how we have fared with this whole process. Here we are, guys, stretched to 22 inches. I have put this on the tillering tree and managed to pull it to a 28-inch draw. It is getting just over 40 pounds. So it's like about 41 point something. But for all intents and purposes, 40 pounds at 28 inches. I've had it drawn now to full draw at 28 inches, and actually passed to 29 just a couple times, but pulled to full draw over a dozen times. So I know it is safely pulling to 28 inches. 41, basically 40 pounds is the final weight. Now, tiller has remained intact. I really don't see a whole lot of detail work that needs to be done. I think that will probably reveal itself when I start shooting it, and we start peaking and tweaking these limbs to get them optimized in terms of width at the tips and any other little details that manifest themselves through the shoot-in process. But I am really, really happy with the tiller. When it is just unstrung, it does follow the string by about 3/4 of an inch, just like it did after the first heat treatment, and then drawn to 27 inches. So I think what I have done with that second heat treatment is just given myself another inch of draw, similar weight, and similar string follow. I'm going to go ahead and take it off the tillering stick here and let it rest for about 20 minutes, and we'll come back and take a look. But my hunch is that it will set at basically dead zero. So cross our fingers here. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes, and it would seem that rather than my hopes, but my fears have been realized here. Nothing major to fear, but it appears as though we are following the string just a tad. So I've got it set against the straight edge of the workbench here, and as you can see, those tips are set back from the grip just ever so slightly. If we look at it, it is about what I would call a fat 1/2 of an inch. I measured it out. You know, it's not 5/8. It's even this side's going to be less than 1/2 an inch. So I'm calling it a 1/2 inch of string follow on this build, and you know, I've not gotten one yet that managed to be exactly even with the grip, or even resting ahead of the grip, or having the tips rest ahead of the grip. So still working on getting to that point, and I think truthfully what's going to get me there is a new mold to do the original glue up. I think that's truthfully what's going to get me over the hump on that one. So we'll probably be building a new mold for future bamboo back and belly builds. So from this point, we're going to go ahead and fashion our grip and make a string for it and start shooting it in. This is the part where we start peaking and tweaking this thing, rounding over its edges and narrowing the tips. Once I put tip overlays on here, it may come close to resting even with the grip. So we'll see how that plays out. Remember that I'm going to put, or my intent with this bow is to actually shoot it off of my thumb with a thumb release. So the arrow rest is going to, for at least that portion of my shooting, is going to reside on the quote-unquote wrong side of the bow. So what I'm going to do is just make a narrowed grip, kind of an ambidextrous type of scenario here. So this grip is going to be a little different than what I have done in the past, at least on this channel. Here is our roughed out grip that I settled on. See, it's just a narrowed, this would be the arrow pass right in here. Kind of stuck with a sort of pistol grip type of scenario, but didn't put a shelf on it. So I should be able to shoot off an index finger or shoot off my thumb just as easily either way. So just leave that as it is for the time being. That gives me the chance now to now make a string, and we'll start shooting this thing in. So at this point I have put about 30 heavyweight arrows through this bow, and I would tell you that trying to learn to shoot with a thumb release while simultaneously trying to shoot in a bow is a very bad idea. I am going to shelve that whole process right now. I have resorted to doing a Mediterranean grip with a split finger, 3-finger draw, and shooting off of my finger side like a regular Mediterranean form, and getting it shot in. Shoots really well, guys. Pretty flat trajectory. I'm pretty happy. I haven't put a chronograph against it yet. I'm not sure that I'm really going to go to that degree. Just unstrung, so here it is after 30 shots, just unstrung. I did put it on the tillering tree to get its weight. Weight remains unchanged. It's right at about 41 pounds. Call it 40 at 28. And I am following the string just unstrung by about an inch. So I suspect that it'll probably come back to a little less than that. It may cut that distance in half and come back to half an inch or so. Not entirely sure, but this bow is really starting to stabilize. I am going to have to narrow the tip on the upper end and kind of work one edge of it because of that original alignment. I'm still got just the lingering effects of it, so it's probably just needs to be moved toward the one knock by about 1/16 of an inch, maybe an 1/8 to get it right. But those tips could stand to be narrowed regardless, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Put some tip overlays on there and clean up the grip here. I'm going to continue to shoot it. The tiller has not changed any that I can tell. I have put about 30 more arrows through this thing and got it back out again onto the tillering tree, and it is still pulling right, just a little over 40 pounds, 28 inches. So looking good in terms of maintaining weight, although some of that might have been a part of getting new overlays on, because I added just a smidge to the movement on the limbs in doing so, and are now pulled to 22 inches on the tillering stick and still maintaining what I think is a pretty good tiller. When I look across that center lamb, I don't have any flat spots or hinges that I'm too concerned, well, that I can really tell. So no concerns with the tiller or weight at this point, and I'm all but to the sanding stage at this point. So to round out the 100 shots, it's just 40 shots of fun time at this point. All right, guys, we are at about 75 shots now. I'll continue shooting her for fun, because that's pretty much where we're at. The everything is stabilized to the to the largest extent. I did have to end up doing a little bit of removal on the top limb there to keep the positive tiller in play, and am sitting at about 3/16 inch positive tiller. This has been relaxing now for a bit, because I went ahead and took the rind off the backing here, so we are rind free on our back. I have sanded out the grip, and you can see that I gave just the slightest arrow rest or pass right here. And when we go to put the leather grip on, we'll give just a little extra measure of leather padding right through these sections here to enhance that shelf a little bit. But it's thinned through the center here and is able to be shot off either side. It along the flat edge of the bench here, we are right at, I mean, just barely over half an inch of set. And so we're looking pretty good, you guys. I am real happy with this bow at this point. I have formed out the tip overlays here, so these are pretty much done. I mean, I am at the point now where just a sanding. I've already kind of gotten through with a file and the card scraper to take all of the mill marks out and get me as close to finished basically as I can be without actually being finished. I'm going to go ahead and shoot out the last 25 arrows just to ensure that everything remains in place. Still 40 pounds at 28 inches. Real happy with the result here, and I'm going to shoot it, sand it, get it all finished up. All right, guys, so here we are, finished up with our bamboo back and belly. I have peaked and tweaked this thing as far as it needs to go. It has been shot now over 100 times. I did end up having to do a little work on this top limb to reestablish some positive tiller on it, but at this point all of our blemishes have been resolved as far as glue opportunities, gaps at least in the glue fixed, sanded. So sanded to started with 100 grit, then moved on to 240 grit, then moved on to some steel wool of varying degrees, and so a really nice smooth bow, smooth finish on a bow. I put in just the slightest arrow rests on both sides of this grip, so I can just as easily shoot off my thumb as off my fingers. With this particular makeup, it is kind of a pistol grip. It is decidedly conformed to fit into a right hand, so it's not ambidextrous, but it is a pistol grip and able to shoot off of either side, just to be clear. In total, finished out with about 3/4 of an inch of string follow, just below that, you know, a little, call it a fat 5/8 of an inch of string follow on that guy, and just a smooth and very flat trajectory shot. Really like the way this bow handles. I have only been shooting it Mediterranean style, so with a split finger grip and off the index finger to get it shot in, but we'll turn over now to trying to learn how to shoot off my thumb, so that was the purpose of this particular bow. I love these reflex deflex designs with very wispy tips. You know, you can probably see my thumb on either side of that tip. Even my pinky perhaps is very, very narrow. It's just wispy in its delivery, so very quiet, but very, very quick. So that's the end of the bow, or the end of this build. Functionally, we got some finishing work yet to do, but that's all the mundane kind of activities from this point forward. So thank you for following along with this build. Should be back with some shooting or something along those lines, and thanks again. Be sure to like and follow my channel, and you can get reminders when the next build starts. So